Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Team Canada wins the Four Nations face-off against the U.S. with a 3-2 win in overtime. Plus, the Premier of Prince Edward Island announces his resignation and steps down. And the Lethbridge International Peace Powwow kicks off this weekend. We have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Fans from coast to coast celebrated Canada's epic overtime victory against the United States in the much-anticipated Four Nations face-off final Thursday night. Superstar center Connor McDavid scored the golden goal in the spectacular 3-2 triumph in Boston, while fans in Canada gathered to witness the historic moment. The game brought out patriotism across the nation.
This game has nothing to do with hockey. It's just about the pride of being
Canadian. Say it.
I'm gonna say it. It's about the pride of being Canadian.
It's been a long time since we've seen like best players on best, and for Canada to actually pull off the win when we're projected to be the underdogs going into the tournament. Yeah. So amazing.
We just want Canada to win the Four Nations tournament in overtime.
Well, Connor McDavid scored that game-winning goal. Both McDavid and Sidney Crosby say the Canadian players are looking forward to the NHL's participation in the 2026 Winter Olympics next February in Milan, Cortina, Italy.
I think there were a lot of questions going into it. What was it going to feel like? Was it going to be an all-star game? What was the level going to be like? I think you saw the passion, and then it just continued to build, and you saw the the attention and how much it meant to people. And obviously in Canada, we have a lot of pride with being Canadian, but also for hockey as well.
That's a confidence builder, obviously, knowing that we can play and we can beat anybody. That American team is as good as you're going to find. They're solid all around, and just excited for our groups. And this is just kind of a little tournament. So we want to do it again next February. That's what it comes down to. Obviously, this was great. Exciting, but the focus is next February, doing it in Italy.
And Canadian singer Chantal Kreviazuk altered the lyric in "O Canada" while singing it at the Four Nations face-off last night as an apparent protest. Did you hear it? Her publicist tells the Canadian press that Kreviazuk changed the lyric from an "all of us" command to that "only us" command in response to Donald Trump's repeated remarks about making Canada the 51st state. The Canadian national anthem was booed loudly ahead of last night's game. Leger executive Sébastien Dallaire says Canadians are largely willing to put their money where their mouths are when it comes to responding to U.S. tariff threats. This comes as a recent Leger poll found 70% of Canadians support retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., with 63% of respondents saying they were buying less American products in stores.
Again, it speaks to the level of anger on the part of Canadians that they are willing for the government to take actions that in the end will hurt our pocketbook. Like replying to those tariffs with tariffs of our own means that it might make prices go up, might make some products less available for us. But Canadians feel that it's the right approach and that we need to retaliate, to reciprocate. Otherwise, it would not be, maybe it would look weak or would be perceived for not doing enough. So strong support for taking immediate reciprocal action at this moment. I can't think of another moment where the level of anger was as high directed at the United States. And I wouldn't have any recent comparables to really play with. There is what I would say a little bit of a Trump eclipse right now in Canada, where Donald Trump and threats of tariffs, the way he has spoken about Canada, the push for Canada to become the 51st state, all of these things are kind of eclipsing all other major issues in Canada, and that's what we're seeing with those results as well. So in a situation like this, Canadians seem to be willing to really take steps to retaliate in their own way, even if individually it's a small gesture, but together it can make a big difference.
Prince Edward Island has a new premier. Rob Lance was sworn in today, replacing Dennis King, who announced his resignation Thursday. After serving as premier since 2019, King had said he would step down as Tory leader and premier today at noon local time, adding the decision was not based on any health issues, but on the best interests of his family and the people of the province.
In reality, there is no perfect time. I have felt for a while that, and I knew that I had more runway behind me than I did perhaps in front of me. Further complicated with the threats of tariffs and the threats to our country's sovereignty and economic uncertainty, and realizing that those aren't going to be simple issues that are going to disappear in a few days or weeks. They will require the attention every minute of every day for the next 4 years. And that really helped me determine that it was best for me to hand the baton of leadership to someone who can be focused for the long term.
The province's Progressive Conservative Party says the caucus unanimously endorsed Lance to become interim party leader and premier. Government House Leader Susie Dillon says Lance would lead the province in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada will move ahead with a high-speed rail link between Toronto and Quebec City. The Liberal government says the planned rail network, which is expected to take several years to design and build, will span approximately 1,000 kilometers, reach speeds of up to 300 kilometers an hour, and include stops in Ottawa, Montreal, Laval, and Trois-Rivières.
A reliable, efficient, high-speed rail network will be a game changer for Canadians, slashing travel times by half, getting you from Toronto to Montreal in 3 hours. Alto will be a truly pan-Canadian endeavor, using expertise and resources from coast to coast to coast. It'll turbocharge our entire economy, create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs, and open new opportunities for Canadian businesses at every link of our supply chain. Just think about the 4,000 kilometers of steel rail that we're going to need to lay. That's steel, aluminum, copper, resources we have that we can use here in Canada.
Trudeau says this would be the largest infrastructure project in Canadian history. Alberta's transportation minister is calling on his federal counterpart to invest in interprovincial mega infrastructure projects. Devin Dreeshen's letter to Anita Anand says doing so would ensure Canada's economy is competitive and successful, given the looming threat of tariffs from the U.S. He says Alberta has signed its own agreements with provinces to boost trade and spur economic growth, and is urging Ottawa to do the same. Dreeshen is proposing a working group tasked with creating a common position to address economic threats facing Canada. Well, February 22nd is National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. Alberta Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services Mike Ellis announced the Combating Trafficking in Persons grant will be funding $5.5 million and will be awarding 19 organizations working to stop human trafficking and empower survivors. Joining him was Canadian country music singer and co-chair of Alberta's Centre to End Trafficking in Persons, and Alicia McManus, a human trafficking survivor who shared a bit of her story and the impact funding like this has on those impacted by human trafficking.
For years, I had so many people tell me over and over again that I'd never be more than just a body to buy and sell. From the woman that ran the brothel that I was at, who laughed in my face when I so naively asked her, what am I supposed to put on my resume after this? To the hundreds, thousands of men that paid for access to my body. There was just constant reminders that I'd never be worth anything more, but they were wrong. They were wrong because I am standing here today next to Canadian country singer Paul Brandt, who has never once made me feel like I was anything less than what I am.
And human trafficking may not be something that you think takes place in Canada, but unfortunately that is not the case. Joylyn Stickle, Executive Director of Not for Sale, shares some staggering statistics.
It is estimated that there are 50 million people in human trafficking globally, and 2 million children are trafficked every year. It's worldwide. It's all over the place. It's more visual in different, like when we were in Thailand and Cambodia, you can see it on the streets. In Mexico, but a lot of the stuff in Canada, they say within a block, there is one person within a block of you where you live, there's one person that's trafficked.
Catch that full interview with Joylyn Stickle with Not for Sale and BCN's Paul Arthur coming up later on in the program. The Crown says a man accused of killing and injuring children at a Quebec daycare should be found not criminally responsible. Prosecutor Corinne Delfond told a judge today that Pierre Ni Saint-Amand should be found not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. 2 children were killed and 6 others injured in February of 2023 when a bus crashed into a Laval daycare. Today's developments means evidence in Ni Saint-Amand's murder trial will be presented before a judge alone instead of a jury trial that was set to start in April. Police in Montreal have arrested a second person in a shooting at a Jewish school in November of 2023. A 19-year-old has been arrested, but police did not announce what charges the person faces. In May of last year, a 20-year-old suspect was arrested and charged with discharging a firearm, shooting, and theft and possession of stolen vehicles. On November 12, 2023, bullets hit the facade of the building, which had also been targeted by gunfire 3 days prior, and no injuries were reported in either shooting. The man accused of gunning down the CEO of United Healthcare on a New York City street appeared in court today. Supporters of 26-year-old Luigi Mangione lined up outside the Manhattan courtroom this morning ahead of his first court appearance since his December arraignment on murder and terror charges. Mangione was arrested in a Pennsylvania McDonald's on December 9th, 5 days after Brian Thompson was shot to death outside a Manhattan hotel as he walked to an investor conference. In international news, Catholics around the world continue to pray for Pope Francis, who has developed pneumonia in both lungs. This week, the Vatican said new tests showed a further complication in the condition of the 88-year-old pontiff. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, prayers were held today in an hour-long vigil at the Manila Cathedral.
Wherever you are, let us continue praying for the Pope, not only for him to recover, but also for him to be able to continue guiding the church.
Well, here locally, the town of Coaldale held a ribbon-cutting ceremony today to celebrate the grand opening of Civic Plaza, marking the completion of Phase 3 of the Civic Square project. It's nestled in the heart of downtown and will serve as Coaldale's community living room, designed to bring residents together across all seasons. In the spring and summer months, the space will come alive with markets, festivals, concerts, and outdoor performances, and the town's ever-growing summer festival. And during the fall and winter months, the state-of-the-art refrigeration system will transform the plaza into a community ice rink. There it is right there. The plaza also features natural gas fire pits, seating areas, picnic tables, public restrooms, and a concession stand. Sounds lovely. Well, the Visit Lethbridge.com arena will be in full swing, full of song, dance, pageantry, colors, and even fry bread. The annual International Peace Powwow and Festival kicks off this weekend in Lethbridge. Come on out to experience the Indigenous performing arts, the spectacular grand entry, and the marketplace, along with food and drink concessions. Doors open at 10 a.m. on Saturday, February 22nd, and again on Sunday, the 23rd. Glenn Miller is one of the volunteers of the International Peace Powwow.
Well, they can expect to see quite a few vendors this year with the dancers coming from all the different categories. They get normally on average about 300 plus dancers every year. So there's quite a variety of people coming from many locations, Western Canada and the States as well. It's also a chance to renew friendships. Having that competition all across Canada, there's powwows. And so this is right here in Lethbridge's backyard. It's grown over the years for sure. 2 grand entries on Saturday and then 1 on Sunday. One of the highlights this year is just changing the crown for the royalty from Miss Blackfoot to Nitsi Tapi, which is reflective of the culture and language.
Parking is free, and you can get your tickets online or at the visit Lethbridge.com arena. And if you are headed out to the powwow this weekend, it looks like we should have finally some decent weather. Not just plus temperatures, but I'm talking some teen temps. I'll be right back with a look at the 7-day and national forecast. Well, we reached a lovely 5 degrees today, but Saturday's looking at us and saying, you ain't seen nothing yet, because look at that double digit there, 10 degrees. And then we have Sunday looking at these guys saying, you guys are adorable. No, not even close. 16 is the high on Sunday. But with these lovely temperatures, keep in mind we are in Chinook territory. So that means high winds. So we saw them today up to 70 kilometers per hour. We're going to see them again tomorrow on Saturday up to 70K. Sunday also expected to be very windy. Then we get into Monday with a high of 12 degrees. There's that sunshine again. a pair of 11s for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday 17 degrees. So it's almost like we flipped the script here on the, like, did we go ahead a few months in the calendar? It was just freezing not that long ago, and now here we are feeling like spring, but it is still winter. So average high for this time of year, 3 degrees. Keep that in mind. Average low, -9, 16 was our high temperature on this day back in 1973. 1917 was our record low, that was -33. And sun rose this morning at 7:30, sunset tonight at 6:01 p.m. So we're 4 minutes more daylight than we saw yesterday. It's happening fast, 10 hours, 18 minutes now of daylight today. Couple of 11s right there on the west coast tomorrow. Victoria seeing 60% chance of showers and then more rain in the afternoon. 20 millimeters of rain expected tomorrow in Vancouver, so very wet day there. Sunshine in Edmonton, high of 4 degrees, and then 8 for the high in Calgary. As we look to the rest of the prairies, not too bad at all, and those temperatures definitely rising. So -2 the high in both Saskatoon rather, and Regina, and -1 the expected high tomorrow in Winnipeg with a mix of sun and cloud. Now, as we look into the central part of the country here, we are seeing a little bit more precipitation, particularly in Ottawa and Montreal there, but Toronto coming in at -4 tomorrow with partly cloudy skies, and then we are seeing that 40% chance of flurries in both Ottawa and Montreal. -4 in Ottawa, -3 in Montreal. As we look to Atlantic Canada, fairly decent until we hit St. John's, which is tonight. They're under a winter storm warning. But today, or tomorrow rather, in Fredericton, mainly sunny. -4, -3 in Halifax, -6 for the expected high tomorrow in Charlottetown with clear skies. Now, St. John's, as I mentioned, they're under a winter storm warning tonight, expecting 10 to 15 centimeters rather of snow. But tomorrow, seeing a mix of sun and cloud, and also up to 60 kilometer per hour winds, -5 for the high there. So there you have it. That is your forecast. The federal government has confirmed that small businesses will have to pay tax on their carbon rebate despite government promises otherwise. Smaller and medium-sized businesses without a large carbon footprint pay the carbon price on fuel imports the same way an individual consumer does, including buying gas for fleet vehicles. Ottawa was going to set aside 7% of revenues collected from the consumer carbon levy to provide funding to smaller businesses, but the programs never worked. By 2024, more than $2.5 billion in carbon price revenue was owed to those businesses from 5 years of paying the levy. Canadian retail sales rose 2.5% in December, pushed higher by grocery stores and motor vehicle dealerships. Stats Canada says December sales increased across the board, growing 3.5% for the month. However, the agency says its advanced estimates for January suggested retail sales dropped slightly by 0.4%. The growth follows a stronger sales at supermarkets and other grocery retailers, except convenience retailers, while beer, wine, and liquor retailers saw an increase of 3.9%. Unifor says it's gravely concerned about the surprise announcement from Stellantis that work at the Brampton Assembly Plant in Ontario is being temporarily halted. The national president of Unifor says the threat of tariffs and the repeal of electric vehicle initiatives are creating chaos and uncertainty in the North American auto industry. Stellantis has been retooling the plant for both electric and gas Jeep Compass vehicles and was set for production to start later this year, while Stellantis has reassured the union production plans are still in place for the plant. Unifor is concerned the timing of the pause brings those plans into doubt. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 367 points on the day to finish at 25,147. The Dow was down 748 points to 43,428. The S&P 500 was down 104 to 6013, and the Nasdaq was down 438 points to finish at 19,524. West Texas Intermediate oil was down 223 to 70.25 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 10 cents to 4.26 US. Gold was down 7.35 to 29.34 US an ounce, and silver was down 43 cents to 32.51 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.63 per bushel, barley is at $6.57, canola is at $15.13, and corn is at $8.51 per bushel. Live cattle were up 20 cents to $197.83. Feeder cattle March contract was up $1.13 to $267.95. Lean hogs April contract was down 85 cents to 87.68, and the Canadian dollar was down over the past 24 hours to 70.30 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, fans from coast to coast celebrated Canada's epic overtime victory against the United States in the much-anticipated Four Nations face-off final on Thursday night. Superstar center Connor McDavid scored the golden goal in the spectacular 3-2 triumph in Boston, while hockey fans in Canada gathered to witness the historic moment. Coming up after the break, human trafficking may not be something you think takes place in Canada, but unfortunately, it's not the case. Joy Lynn Stickle, Executive Director of Not for Sale, shares some staggering statistics with BCN's Paul Arthur. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or our YouTube page anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews.
We all applaud the amazing work of William Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson in stopping the slave trade back in the 1800s, but has it really stopped? I mean, how much of a problem is slavery today? It's still going on. So joining me from Lethbridge to talk about this today is Executive Director of Not for Sale, Joy Lynn Stickle. So good to have you with us, Joy Lynn.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, always important to talk about this stuff. I mean, first of all, tell us a bit more about your organization, Not for Sale. That started right here in Lethbridge, I believe. And so, what are you trying to accomplish, and what motivated you to get this started?
Yeah, so long story short, we started because I had gone to a conference and heard about human trafficking for the first time and sex slavery, and that kids were involved, and I had never heard about that before. So that was in 2009, and it grabbed my heart, and I came home to my husband and said, I don't know what we can do. I don't know what difference we can make, but we have to. We have to step out. Since then, we started a home in Cambodia, and ran that for 3 years with another organization, and that home had 23 women and girls go through it, and we have amazing stories from that of women finding freedom and finding hope again, and children being safe. And yeah, and then since then we moved to our home to Mexico. It took us 8 years to get licensing with the government. It was just back and forth, a bunch of different factors with that, but we were able to open that home last year. At the beginning of the year, we opened it and it was fantastic. So we've been running our home in Mexico for the last year, since January 2004. We've had 13 girls in that home. We currently have 6, and one of them has a baby. Yeah, and then we also have a home in Kenya that kind of happened organically. We have another ministry there that that helps girls who can't go to school because they're pregnant, but a little bit different than actual human trafficking. So this one, the police knew that this woman was caught in human trafficking. She was being trafficked by her aunt. She was pregnant because of that, and had a baby that was very, very malnutrition. And yeah, and so the police worked with us there, and now we have a home in Kenya helping those people out.
Wow, that's amazing. I look at that and I go like, yeah, what can we do? Well, you did something. You're not an expert in these areas, but you just said, hey, let's do something. And you get some people around you who are more experts in these areas, and look what happens. So that's yeah, good on you guys, man. Can you share a little bit about? I think you call them the Hope Totes. You apparently distribute to unhoused girls and women in I guess it would be both Mexico and Kenya, or is it just Mexico?
Those are local, so we distribute those in Lethbridge here.
Okay.
With our ministry, My City Care, which I'm sure.
Yeah.
About. So, partnered with My City Care, we help the women, and there's not as many young girls who are unhoused in Lethbridge, but yeah. So these are hygiene kits that serve a practical need, but also open the door for relationships, so that these women can just kind of step out and toward safety and stability on their own, and know that they have a place to come to with our ministries there. So yeah, over the lifetime of Hope Totes, we've distributed over 8,000 of them.
Oh, wow. Nice. Okay. And I understand that, I mean, you're hoping to open some safe houses in Canada as well?
Yeah, that is a dream for sure. Even coming from Cambodia to Mexico and learning the different governments, Canada is a whole new ball game that we're learning as well. So yeah, we're stepping out and making connections. There's so many good organizations in Canada, but it's breaking the mold to open a home for underage.
That's well, that's exciting. I'm sure there's viewers who'd want to be part of that, and of course, this all takes money. So you have a fundraising gala coming up, I believe, May 23rd.
We do, yeah. This is our 5th annual. We say annual loosely because we stopped kind of around COVID, but this is our 5th gala, and we take it and we use it to spread awareness, help people understand what's happening and how they can help. So it's May 23rd at the Parallel Church in Lethbridge, and you can follow us to kind of keep up to date with the details of that.
Okay, excellent. Now, for viewers who maybe don't know how widespread this is, the child, sex trade, human trafficking, it's not just children, of course, it's, older women as well. And I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking about in Canada, and then how many globally?
Yeah, so it's always tricky to find numbers, even when you go and look at Canada and all that, but it is estimated that there are 50 million people in human trafficking globally, and 2 million children are trafficked every year. So it's worldwide. It's all over the place. It's more visual in different, like when we were in Thailand and Cambodia, you can see it on the streets. In Mexico, but a lot of the stuff in Canada, they say within a block, there is one person that, within a block of you where you live, there's one person that's trafficked.
Yeah, we don't think of it here in Canada, but it is actually happening. And,
Yeah.
and I know it's not even necessarily, I'm told, always sexual in nature. Of course, that's the worst though. But sometimes apparently, underage kids are used for labor. Working in factories, sometimes not getting paid or getting paid very little, just enough food to kind of get by. I mean, that's not good either.
Yeah, no, you see that globally for sure. The factory side of things, the kids sitting on the street begging. But in Canada, one of our team leads, she was trafficked in Canada when she was 14. And she was um, sexually trafficked, but also she was taught how to break into cars. She was a drug mule for them. So that kind of labor trafficking happens here, happens with kids. And yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. Now, in other countries, whether it's Mexico or Kenya, something like that. So what actually happens? I mean, do the kids literally get kidnapped, or is it, I've heard of some cases where the parents are actually really, really poor. And I think at times maybe misled completely by somebody who's saying, hey, your kids are going to be way better off. We're going to get them a better life. They promise that. But of course, they end up simply being trafficked.
Yeah, so you hear different stories, different scenarios all over the place. In Cambodia, we saw that it was more of a cultural thing where this is when you turn 12, this is how you help support the family. And so it's more welcomed, legitimized there. We've seen where the parents are addicted to drugs and they use their children to help with financing that. And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of it, especially in America and North America, is online. And so they're lured online, through games and through different social websites and such. And so a lot of what we want to do is raise awareness and teach families and teach parents and teach kids. We're going into schools teaching kids what to watch for. And when this person says he is a friend that's your age, it could be a 40-year-old guy, or it could be a couple. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways. The movies that you see with the white van pulling up and luring kids with candies isn't as prevalent for sure from what we see. But like you said, the promise of a better life, you're sending your child to a different country because you can't support them, and this person said they can. And there's a whole bunch of different scenarios.
Okay. And what age range are we talking about it? And is it mainly girls, or I'm assuming there's some boys that are trafficked as well, right?
Absolutely. The age ranges we've heard stories of newly born babies being abused, and up to however old, right? Our girls in our home are more teenagers, and so they're we want to have another home. We want to have a bunch of homes that help support different groups of people. But my heart is as young as we can help them. That's how we want to do it. But we had one girl who was 6 years old in Cambodia who is in our home. Her story was that her grandma trafficked her, and then I don't know if the little girl knew that it was her grandma, because she somehow escaped, got back to grandma, and grandma sold her. And that happened twice, 3 times, twice again. So,
that is just heartbreaking. So, these kids basically have been, seriously abused for years. So that's going to have a severe impact. Not just on their physical bodies, but I'm thinking, their emotional, mental, and spiritual health, right? So, what do you do to bring restoration to these kids?
The biggest thing is to have a home that they have a safe family. And obviously we are a faith-based group, so that we know that Jesus is the hope for these girls. But in Mexico, we have psychologists, we have doctors, we have house that are part of their network there, that they are able to have access to counselors and different things. And we know that it's not going to be an overnight thing that, okay, you're rescued, you're safe here,
right.
You're going to be. right? There's lots of trauma that goes through, and you see it differently with different girls. One of our girls that we rescued, she was unvocal for months. She wasn't able to talk. She didn't know how to use the washroom. She didn't know how to use utensils. And yeah, and so it took a while to kind of just surround her, let her know she's safe, just continue to be constant and stable for her, and she's doing beautifully, and she's still in our home.
Wow. And is this like a partnership with local churches then, like in Mexico, or like who actually gets the hands on? I mean, of course, there's some probably some government people, like you say, psychologists and so forth, and doctors.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way our home works in Mexico is Not for Sale has their own home. We hire local ladies who live in the home around the clock. There's schedules and different things. So that's our home. But the way that the kids they come to us is through child and family services. So we don't actually go out at the moment and rescue. It's from situations.
That's a whole other ball game that you've got to have some unique skills and frankly be willing to risk your life doing it. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And do the kids learn some skills, pardon me? Like, I mean, they're going to need to be earning a living at some point as well, right? Or maybe they, I don't know if they go into the adoption system. I'm not sure what happens.
Yeah. So when we were in Mexico, or sorry, when we were in Cambodia, we had a trade that the women and girls learned. They actually sewed all the costumes for the Australian ballet. So they had a contract with that. And then we've seen other ones that they open up a cafe or a barbershop or a bakery. That's our heart. We would love to do that. Our girls are younger now and all going to school. So that's one of the dream homes or dream projects that we have in Mexico, is to have a place where, yeah, these girls can learn a trade and have a place that when they're 18, they don't have to feel like they have to be out of our family.
Yeah, okay. How long does it take? I mean, I'm assuming it probably varies from child to child, person to person, to recover though, and do they fully recover? You have stories of kids, now they're becoming adults and they're fully integrated back into society.
Yeah. So one of our girls in Cambodia came through the home and ended up marrying a pastor, as a pastor's wife over there, and it's just using her experience to help others. So we've seen that for sure, and like you said, it does vary for sure for girl and different situations and all that. So it's hard to say, but we know that the hope is Jesus. We know that if we can surround them with love and safety, then that's a way better chance of actually healing the trauma.
What can viewers do to help stop human trafficking? Again, most of us aren't going to get out there, and physically rescue kids, dangerous thing, right? But what are our options?
So locally in Alberta, we have different locations that you can hands-on help. We have this gala coming up. We have a contract with Canada, or with Alberta Road Systems, that we clean up the ditches once a year, and different things. We do markets that we need volunteers. So we need people who have a heart for this and have time that they can volunteer. Definitely donating is a huge part. We can't do this without our donors. And it takes quite a bit to run a home in Mexico and to give these girls what they need for safety.
And you want to expand here in Canada as well. So you need some more volunteers that are going to, again, do some markets, that sort of thing, to raise funds. I know you sell some merchandise, that sort of thing. And of course, donations. It needs to be, tax deductible as well. And May 23rd, you have a fundraiser happening at Parallel Church, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so we have also, you can be an advocate, just raising funds and awareness. You can bring us ideas or connections, business connections, school connections, those kind of things. Yeah. So just using your sphere of influence, using your world to to help us rescue these.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and for what you're doing today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's good stuff, isn't it, what they're doing? If you want to be part of it, check it out, notforsale, all right, .ca. Joy Lynn Stickle, the Executive Director of Not For Sale.
Today, we're going to learn more about this type of cancer and what kinds of treatments and supports are available. Our guest has battled myeloma himself and is the head of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. He joins us here in the windy city of Lethbridge. Brian Treadwell, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks, Nav. Thanks for inviting me to Bridge City News.
Great to have you on. So, Brian, can you explain to our viewers what myeloma is and how Canadians are battling this disease?
Okay, first of all, let's answer the second question first. Though classified as a rare disease, myeloma is the second most common form of blood cancer. In 2022, nearly 4,000 Canadians were diagnosed with myeloma, and currently 11 Canadians are diagnosed every day with the disease.
Wow.
Yeah. So as far as myeloma itself, and here's the medical part, and I don't want to get too medical on it, but it's a blood cancer associated with the abnormal behavior of uncontrolled growth of plasma cells. That's the white blood cell. Plasma cells are made in the spongy part of your bone, and they're an important part of your immune system because they produce the antibodies. Okay, and in myeloma, too many plasma cells are produced and they crowd out the good cells like red blood cells and platelets that our body needs to keep us healthy. And when you have numerous areas in your body affected by these growths, the disease is called multiple myeloma.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And so what are the symptoms of myeloma then?
Okay, some of the common primary symptoms are bone pain, anemia, extreme fatigue, reoccurring infections, and kidney problems. However, anything unexplained should be referred to your doctor so he or she can refer you on to a hematologist, and those people are the ones that make the specific diagnosis.
And is there a known cure?
No, currently it's incurable. However, great strides are being made in increasing both the quality and quantity of survivability of diagnosed patients. A decade ago, the survivability was about 5 years, but now with research and new drugs and treatments, people are living 5, 10, 15, 20 years and longer past their initial diagnosis. So that's the good news.
That is some good news. And what kinds of treatments are available and which kinds of treatments seem to be having the most success?
Okay, because myeloma is, well, I call it a designer disease. It designs itself around you. Your medical team will decide what's the best treatment for you. It's all depending on your age and your other health factors. You may have a stem cell transplant or not. I had a stem cell transplant. And since I had a stem cell transplant, even the protocol has changed for treatment then. So treatment is always changing for the better because they find all sorts of new things, new ways of treating it. So it's an ongoing process. So I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be.
Well, I mean, so you're a myeloma survivor yourself. So can you just tell us what life with myeloma is like?
Well, as far as treatments go, what are having the most success? Stem cell transplants, CAR T therapies. Your doctor sort of gives you a designated treatment plan to put the cancer cells into remission. And that's the best possible way because it's incurable. The best place to get is to have it go into remission. And therapies evolve. Treatment works for a period of time that you're in remission. But then cancer, it's smart. It adjusts itself to those drugs and it says, okay, I'm used to it. So now I'm going to grow again. So then you become what they call relapsed. So the doctors have to go and find a new drug to go on and put you on. And you go on that for a while and go back into remission. And then the drug gets smart again, or the cancer gets smart again and says, okay, I like this, I'm going to grow again. So this dance goes on and on and on until get back in and you run out of known drugs and you're put into what they call refractory because you're at the end of the line. So what happens then is your team has to look for drug trials, which aren't approved, by Health Canada. It's not a known, produced, but it's done at universities and specific things like that. So you hope to get on drug trials, and a lot of people are on them, and their survivability is increasing again. So it's an interesting dance. Here in Alberta, the University of Calgary has world-class researchers, and they're coming up with some great new drugs. And I have one lady in our group that's been on there for about 5 years with a trial drug, and she was initially on palliative care, and she's gone to just blossoming on this trial drug.
Wow, amazing.
She's doing really well. So that's giving some great hope.
And going back to living with myeloma, in your experience, was there pain, discomfort?
Well, for me, yours truly, I have anemia, which gives low hemoglobin. So always being tired, and that's no fun. Of late, I've been dealing with having to going for blood transfusions, and so it's an interesting dance. I had a stem cell transplant in 2021, and there's a whole battery of tests that lead up to going through that. And your doctor has to decide whether you're a good candidate for having a stem cell transplant. It's based on age and your health factors again. Now they're treating based on that whether you have a stem cell transplant or whether you don't, and your drugs that you take are adjusted specifically for that. So as far as day-to-day life, there are good days, there's bad days, there's in-between days. So you just, as Christy Lane sang, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah.
Now, do we know anything about what causes myeloma?
Yeah, that's a good question. Everybody asks what causes it. We really don't know. We really don't know. Some say the environment, others say it could be pesticides. We're not really sure. No. The cure, that's what we're after.
Absolutely. Now, are there any ethnicities or age demographics who are more susceptible to getting myeloma?
Well, the median age for diagnosis is 65, though I've heard as young as 35. Primarily, it's 70s and 80s that get diagnosed. And there's more of a prevalence for Asian and Afro-American heritage. So it can be anybody. Let's face it, it can be anybody.
And I want to go back to your experience. When you were diagnosed with myeloma, what was your reaction, and how has your journey been battling this disease?
Well, it's funny. I have to give credit to my family physician. He was tired of seeing me complaining about always being tired. So he finally said, I've got to send you to Dr. Benke. And my hematologist sent me up to Calgary with a battery of tests. And I went back to see him for the diagnosis. And he came in and sat down beside me and took a deep breath and said, you have multiple myeloma. So I just went, okay, so what do we do next? That's the thing. I wasn't no woes me, whatever.
It just didn't phase you. You were just like, okay, how do we tackle this? How do we get this?
Exactly. How do we get on with it and live life and adjust ourselves accordingly? I wasn't going to give up and throw in the towel or anything like that. Okay, go with the hand you're dealt.
Well, what a great attitude to have towards it as well. Now, you lead the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Can you share what a typical meeting might look like?
Have you ever seen a wrestling match? No, it's catch as catch can. We do a little bit of everything. There's no formal meeting because meetings get bogged down in red tape and all sorts of stuff. We sit around in a group when we can be outside because that's the best place to be. In the fact that myeloma, you're immunocompromised, so you don't want to pick up diseases from other people. In the winter months, yeah, Zoom is the preference, but we'll go to Timmy's and sit around and have coffees and things like that. But we'll go down to Henderson Park and sit around and share stories. The thing is, it's just being able to mix and mingle with people who share the same disease, and we all talk about how we react differently to the same drug. Because as I said, it's a designer disease. We all react differently to the same drug that we're given. The side effects affect us differently.
And to what degree does myeloma affect the way one lives their lives day to day? Like, are there certain things you need to avoid? Are there certain precautions you need to take? You talked about masking and being immunocompromised.
It's frustrating because at times you can't plan things. The way you adjust is the way it's individual. You'll hear a different story from each person that you talk to that has myeloma. Some are going on as if there's nothing wrong with them, and that's a great attitude, and that's good. So you just have to watch what you do. We're not skydiving because it involves your bones and things like that. Some of us don't ride bicycles or do things that will cause us, that will fall off, and hurt ourselves. Or, as I said, I'm not going in the wrestling ring, and we're not doing anything like that. Plans change. As I said, if you're not feeling good, it's okay to stay home. And when you're in doubt, talk to your doctor, talk to your medical team. They'll tell you what you should do or you shouldn't do, and talk to a dietitian if you need specific things you need to adjust for your diet, and things like that.
Now, this doesn't look like it affected you based on the way you responded to being diagnosed, but is it common for depression to set in? And what advice can you offer to help prevent this from happening?
Oh, yeah. I'm an old broadcaster, so I've got almost 40 years of faking it till I make it, okay? I can get behind the microphone and sound like I'm on top of the world. But behind and underneath, it's a completely different story. It's like a duck in the water. But any life-changing thing like diagnosis like that, it's bound to change your psyche. I admit every now and then I have a little pity party, but you've got to keep a positive outlook. Absolutely, surround yourself with positive people. Read positive things, listen to positive music. Don't go on the internet. Oh, the internet, it's the bane of people with diseases because you get so much misinformation out there. And I'll say more about that in a moment. But the disease hasn't robbed me of my sense of humor. Maybe you haven't caught on to that, but Monty Python's, always keep on the sunny side of life.
Life
You've ever
of
seen the
Brian.
video for that? Yeah.
And any final thoughts on winning the battle against myeloma, and any final thoughts in general? You were talking about misinformation.
Yeah. I always say to anybody I talk to, if you're going to go on the internet, go to Myeloma Canada's website, myeloma.ca. That's where you're going to find the most current information about myeloma. It's been rebranded and refreshed, and it's got the most current information, research, pamphlets, YouTube videos. It's just chock full of things. It has contact information. We have over 45 support group network groups across Canada. So whether you're in Sydney, Nova Scotia, or out in Tofino, BC, or up north, you're going to find groups in your province that you can connect with, whether it be virtually on Zoom or in person, and get a hold of them. And any of the leaders will be happy to get a hold of you and talk to you on your level about where you are in your journey with myeloma, because they've been where you are. And that's one good thing about it. We're not paid volunteers or anything like that. We're people who are living myeloma, just as you are living myeloma, if I'm talking to you as a myeloma patient.
Brian Treadwell is the leader of the Lethbridge Myeloma Support Group. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.